Hello everyone and welcome back to another Babbling Irons video and another review for us, and again another 3 points for us to talk about. How you doing, Mike?
Yeah, all good, mate. How about yourself?
Yes, good, thanks. So yeah, let's just crack on. Really good win against Anderlecht last night. Huge 3 points, probably the toughest game of the six we're going to play in that group. Let's start with the lineups because there were a few changes from what we're used to seeing. A few players got opportunities that probably don't feature in the Prem. So taking a look at the lineups here, it looked like we kind of played a back three. And we've seen this a couple of times in Europe with Moyes, where we've played this sort of 3-4-1-2 with Ben Rama being the more central point. And then we had Antonio and Bowen kind of playing either side of him. And a back three of Ogbonna, Dawson, Johnson. And then kind of a four of Kufau, Lanzini, Flynn Downes, and Emerson. What did you make of it?
Yeah, maybe one or two of those stats there from the site you pulled it from surprised me on the West Ham side. But it was a good game. To be fair, it was ebbed and flowed between the two teams. I think the formation is kind of what we expected. It was good to see Ben Johnson back. I think that's been something we've been craving for a while, just to get him back, because obviously it means another option at right back, especially with Soufal's form. And I think, in the first half, we did quite well. We shaded it probably a little bit with a couple of the chances, but, we were a bit profligate in the game. Obviously, Fabio Silva took that to the extreme, I would say, for Anderlecht. But a player I did particularly quite enjoy watching for them was Yari Basharan. I think he was really good. He's a player I've actually said for a good couple of years that he'd be a player that we should look at, particularly as someone to push Bowen in that right-hand side, because one of those players can play anywhere across the front, very flexible and obviously young. So I really enjoyed watching him actually firsthand, like a real kind of in a competitive game as opposed to the Belgian league, because obviously the quality is not always as high. But I thought we acquitted ourselves well. Because, as you said, it's going to be the toughest game of the group. And we went to Belgium and we got the 3 points, and it's 3 for 3. So can't complain, can we? Really?
Yeah, exactly. It was a strange kind of game. I think the first half we started really well. We kept possession of the ball really nicely. We're moving the ball about a bit, kind of figuring out how Anderlecht wanted to play, and I think it was actually them trying to figure out how good we actually are in possession. I think they expected us to be a little bit better because after kind of 20, 25 minutes, they were starting to put a little bit more pressure on us. We lost control of the game quite a lot. And let's talk about that first half and the midfield of Flynn Downes and Lanzini, because they had a lot of ground to cover with the formation that we do play. And what did you make of we'll get into Downes a bit more, but Lanzini's role kind of dropping deeper with Downes and how he kind of performed in that role?
I personally think the ship has sailed for Lanzini. I said it last season. I am unmoved, and I am not for changing. He does the safe things very well, and that's the thing. I think he's often flattered to deceive, and he scored some good goals in this role since he's been there for Moyes, but when he's not in a free, he's not as effective. Again, there was one moment where we had a really good chance for a counter. He's beat a player, but then he just gets out-muscled. And it was easy. He just got kind of pushed to one side and fell over. And I just look at Lanzini now and just go, you're a very expensive squad player. And I think he was outshone by his more inexperienced midfield partner, who looks more of the established pro. And also, considering he's quite diminutive, he wasn't one to kind of be shrugged off or moved aside. Obviously, Lanzini holds possession, which is great. But again, it's not always very progressive. Sometimes for me, it's a bit passive. It's just retaining possession and rotating, and it's not really penetrative or forcing play for me.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think playing in that midfield yesterday, when we were kind of playing a two in there with Ben Rama very much part of that front three, not really dropping back that much. You have to be obviously good at what Lanzini does with the ball, but defensively and, actually showing himself in a match, it's not necessarily the best from him. I think with what happened with his injury, it's understandable when he lost his pace and a lot of stuff went wrong. And recovering from that kind of injury is just so difficult. And the age he's at, 29 now.
Yeah,
he's a very technical player. He's one of our best technical players, but it's just there's no actual impact. So I think the best way for him to play would be in a midfield three when we're going to have possession, and he doesn't really have to be the one that's going to do all of that defensive duty or provide the creative output as well. He can kind of be that middle ground where he's moving the ball on nicely and keeping possession. But yeah, I think this will probably be his last season with us, because the way we're heading and hopefully bringing in more youthful players that can have more of an impact on the game, I just think he'll probably want to move on to a different place. I don't know if it'll be in the Premier League, but yeah, I think this season will be the last of Manu.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's got it's a 2-year deal. I think they can extend, so they might trigger it to keep his value high. But by and large, I think his time has been and gone. And when you look at Moyes' comments after the game, where he was talking around, they've brought in some good players. They made a lot of changes this summer. You can kind of read between the lines and say there's probably going to be the same again next summer, with a massive focus on defence, obviously, because a lot of players are out of contract. In fact, we have 3 guaranteed players out of contract in defence at this point, because there's no new contracts on the table. So we have to assume they're going. And there's other positions. So you probably say there's 6 or 7 outgoings, with 6 or 7 then needing to come in the summer. Lanzini, I think, is one of those as well. And I think the next player we're probably going to talk about is probably going to be another one on that list. You put out a tweet about Ben Rama being, essentially, is this his time to shine? Is this the game to go out there? I feel we're always kind of saying that. I do like Ben Rama. I like the way he plays. I think one of our problems is we always focus on the negative when it comes to Ben Rama. Yesterday, he did a lot of good things in the game in terms of getting into spaces, picking up into nice pockets and laying the ball off and so on. But he had 2 massive opportunities that he spurned. He makes a couple of times where he looks to try and force it a little. And I think sometimes that's because he's trying to impress. He's trying to make things happen. He sometimes forces it rather than being a bit more natural. But, you kind of look at it and go, it was a great opportunity for him yesterday to do like what he did when we played Ghent last season, where he absolutely controlled that game and was brilliant in that one.
Yeah.
And it was one of those games where he was just constantly on the cusp of actually walking off and going, I had a really good game there, because he could have easily had 2 goals, but I'll give him the first one. It was on his weaker foot, and you could see he probably wasn't that comfortable coming into it. And it was, again, as much as it looks like it was really easy onto him, it wasn't necessarily that easy to come up where he's coming on with his left foot. And even the second one, he should have scored. It was slightly behind, if I'm being kind. But again, he probably should have scored that. And it just adds to that point of he's so close to being the player that many of us have said he could be. And he always flirts with it. But it's just one way or another, it just doesn't seem to click. And I think when you look at the types of left wingers that are out at the moment in terms of in the market, we know one in particular is going to be available at least at the end of the summer in Cody Gakpo, which is obviously, it'll take big money. But when you've got the likes of Leeds looking at him, and if we get into Europe again, then obviously you've got to say, well, that's surely a player we should look at as well. So you would say maybe Ben Rama, again, it's another opportunity that he has spurned to kind of nail down his place. The one good thing for him is Cornet's out with a bit of an injury. So it's back to him and Fornals playing as the 2 left wing choices. But yeah, I felt it was a good opportunity for him yesterday. And it's one that just kind of just fizzled away for him, I think.
Yeah, I think I can see real similarities, not in the way they play, but with how their kind of West Ham careers goes with Felipe Anderson. He was brought in as this kind of flair player that was meant to make things happen and be a bit more consistent in front of goal and, creating chances. That is probably what frustrated West Ham fans about Anderson a lot, is the output side. He'd have games like, Norwich at home, Southampton away, where he scored a couple goals, and he would show that quality. And we've seen that with Ben Rama, like you mentioned, the Genk away game last season. Newcastle away, the first game of last season where he was brilliant. So I see similarities in them. Really frustrating because they've got the ability. And that's the most frustrating thing with Ben Rama. You can tell he has the ability to play football and, be our main guy, essentially. And it's just his decision making. That is what it is for me. Yes, he'll miss those kind of chances. That side I'm not too overly worried about because the goals would come if he keeps getting in those positions.
Yeah, I think that's the right point, isn't it? It's sometimes it's easy to focus on the negative, say he should have scored, but you've also got to then go, yeah, but as long as he's constantly getting in those positions, even if he's missing, but as long as he keeps getting in those positions, and as you say, one or two is eventually going to start going in, and then it starts to cascade into positive kind of aspects rather than
exactly. Yeah, I mean, for that chance, he held his run really well. Bowen made a great run down the side, and Ben Rama could have easily just drifted into the box, but he held his run, created a space for himself, and he should be finishing it, but he got into that position. We'll probably see Cornet do similar this season, and there won't be as much outroar for him missing. But
like the Chelsea header, wasn't it, the one that he missed, which would have been a legitimate goal? That again is an example of we pour over it more with certain players than we do others. Again, I think obviously there's other things around. I think why Ben Rama is a bit pulled out, and others are a bit protected. It is just how it is. But I felt for him because it was an opportunity to really make a claim, and it just kind of fizzled away a little bit. Obviously, and also to be fair to him actually as well, he made a brilliant little pass for Antonio, who then absolutely thrashed it. No composure whatsoever. He just absolutely levered it. His approach was, I'm just going to hit it with everything, and everything was just no control, all power. And you kind of feel for him as well, because there are moments where he does things like that and others let him down. He obviously has let himself down, but there are points where he does these good things, and because someone else has let him down, it's kind of like, well, maybe his pass wasn't good enough. And it's then put back to him, and it's kind of like, well, actually, if the other player did more what they should have, we might have had a better outcome.
Yeah, I think that honestly, the biggest frustrating with Benrahma for me is his output in, when he's actually got the ball and his decision making, because there was at least 4 or 5 times yesterday where Benrahma was carrying the ball, had the chance to slot in one player, took too long on the ball or played the wrong pass, and just little things like not being as careful in possession. We'll see that more with Paqueta, I feel like. He came on and really, really controlled the game, controlled that midfield, and the difference was there to see from both of them. And yes, Benrahma is this creative player that will try things and it won't come off. That I don't have a problem with. But when it's the simple pass and, just executing those simple things, the basics really for what he can do, that's where I think that he needs to improve if he is going to stick around. And I think he's been given enough chances now to do that. And, we saw yesterday he was playing in that central role, given that free license from Moyes to really showcase what he can do. And unfortunately, he just didn't do it. But on the opposite side, Flynn Downes, what performance from him?
Yeah, it was, as we say, compared to Lanzini, who, again, for me, didn't really do very much. He did kind of what was asked of him, I suppose, but again, didn't really do a great deal. I think Flynn Downes was the opposite as that. He got himself involved, broke up play, won back possession, was good in his passing. He wasn't just always sideways and backwards. It was trying to force play. He admitted he had a bit of a nosebleed at one point, and in a rush of blood and fired it way over into row Z. But again, it's as we said with Benrahma, he got himself in that position. That shows confidence to get himself there. And after the game, after a game like that, the good thing is it's going to give Moyes. I know some people were saying that he should be in. I don't think he should be in the 11 at all. I don't think it gives a selection headache, but what he gives is, again, a nice option because Moyes can start to believe that he's a player he can rely on in games if he has to, or a player that he can rely on to bring on and maybe help close out a game if we want to be a bit more defensive or we want to add a bit more bite to midfield. I think performances like that go a long way in which building trust. For me, when I look at players like Downes and I look at what Moyes is that Moyes wants to know that he can trust them, but he also wants to know that his players can trust them before he will then kind of, give them more opportunities. And I think last night and obviously the previous game, he's earned maybe a couple more opportunities in which to kind of stake a claim. I don't think he's quite at the point yet where he is going to be in the 11. And if I'm being brutally honest, I don't think he has quite yet enough in offensive or defensive outputs in which to, get rid of Souček, especially if Souček plays to the level like he did against Wolves. If that's the Souček we see from the next set of games, then he's not going to play. And again, if we're also looking for a possession-based or an attacking kind of place, he's also not better than Fornals. So I kind of look at it in that respect of, would I play him over either one of those two if I was playing a free? Probably not. And again, the conversation we had the other day as well, Rice for me is a world-class number 6. A very good number 8, but a world-class number 6. I will be playing my player in the position where he's world-class rather than the position that he's very good, just so we can bring in another who's playing quite well. And I know that sounds maybe a bit silly, but
yeah,
if you've got a world-class player, play that world-class player in his world-class role.
Yeah, I think the thing with Downes is I from those two performances, I've been really, really impressed, albeit against, not Premier League opposition, but, Anderlecht away to do that, especially playing with Lanzini for the majority of the game as well, who's, not going to offer you much protection as well. I don't know. I think he does deserve it. I think playing Fulham this Sunday, I don't think Moyes will, but if we were to play Downes and Rice with Paqueta in front, absolutely no problem with that. I think that would probably be our best option. I know Souček had a really good game against Wolves, but we've seen Souček for the past year and a half, kind of consistently underperform, and maybe having Downes in there like we saw against Anderlecht in the second half when Rice came on. Rice didn't really have to sit in. I know we've said we want Rice to play in his best position, but if we're going to play Downes and Rice, especially with Cornet being injured, so Fornals will be on the left because he won't play Ben Rama there. It'll be Paqueta in the middle, Fornals left, Bowen right. Would I rather Downes and Rice over Rice and Souček? Probably. I think I would prefer that, especially at home to Fulham, where we're probably going to have more of the ball than we did against Wolves. So I don't know. I think I'd like to
also look at that as well as we're going to have more of the ball. We're going to attack more. Having someone like Souček as an aerial threat in open play to get forward and attack whilst Paqueta drops. So you can always flip that and turn that to the positive for the other. And I think with the way that Souček played against Wolves, against no disrespect intended to a lesser team, could be a very important player like he was in that Wolves game. Again, I think he earned a stay of execution because of that game.
Yeah.
If he doesn't perform against Fulham or he doesn't play to the same level against Wolves, then I am more than for, let's look at maybe refreshing things and freshen things up. But ultimately, Flynn Downes is laying down the building blocks in which to make a stake or make a claim for at least a chance in the 11. I don't think he's quite there yet, but he's had 2 very positive performances in Europa Conference. Again, we've probably got some cup games coming soon, so again, he'll get a chance there. So he's just got to keep chipping away and keep going and keep chipping away. And the reason why I say that is because previously it was also said that Connor Coventry was performing both better than Flynn Downes and Souček in training. So you kind of also got to take those performances, not with a pinch of salt, but just, again, be a bit mindful of that. If they're not also performing or others are outperforming on the training pitch and that player's not playing, then you also maybe got to sit there and go, well, there's maybe a reason why he hasn't yet committed to giving that player, giving someone like Downes their chance. And I think, again, as we know with Moyes, Souček is very much established in the Premier League. Yeah. But Downes is making a very good and strong claim for a spot. And, fair play to him because it's exactly what he needed to do. He's been a lot more positive than what we saw with Swansea, where there's a lot of possession. Sometimes I would probably say for possession's sake and with some of his passing, but he had a very good game, and it's we have to praise that. And I think he's, as Moy says, he hasn't given him a headache, but he's given him something nice to think about. So in other words, I know I have a player I could probably rely on from the bench. And I think that's what we have to also acknowledge, is that when you listen to things like Moy saying that, he's not saying it's a selection headache yet, but what he's saying is it's given him food for thought, which is something that we want and something that's great within the team. And it's also good that we can have this conversation as to, well, do we actually get rid of Souček now from the 11 for the next game, and do we go with obviously Downes? And you would argue that in a game where arguably you want to be more attacking, then the more attacking players like Souček is probably the preferred. But we probably talk about that one more in our other preview. But getting back to Downes, it was really good to watch him play and look so confident. He looked really settled, and after the game, you can see he's so chuffed to be in the team and to be at West Ham. So it's quite a feel good to see him performing and doing so well.
Well, one player who's definitely cemented his spot in the XI for the Premier League is Gianluca Scamacca. Another goal for him off the bench to give us the win in the second half. I think about 10 minutes from time. Really nice build-up play into Paqueta's feet. Nice little ball over the top to Scamacca, who knew, instantly that the space was there to run in. That you could see him scan before he even, attack the space. Little touch, first time finish into the back of the corner, back of the net. It's just really impressive. I think most people, when he came in, thought, okay, he's going to be, 16 or 17 goals in Serie A. He's going to score goals for us. But I don't think many West Ham fans realised, including myself, how good he was, technically as well. We saw it 3 or 4 times, in his 20-minute cameo yesterday. Picking up the ball, turning with the ball, taking on a player with a bit of skill. And then there was one part where he put Bowen in or Kufau in with a really nice pass through to the right. And I was just sat there like, oh my God, we've actually got like a striker that can do more than just score goals or give us what Antonio wants. He can give us everything.
Yeah. Obviously, me and Sloth were very enthusiastic when we signed Scamacca, and we have shouted for many a time how good technically he is. Obviously, some of those lamppost comments that were made before he even signed look fairly ridiculous now. This is why you don't judge a player just by their height. Technically, he's actually brilliant. I think I put out a tweet earlier on our account saying, the way he came on showed us what we've been missing in not having a natural centre forward. That's not a slight or a dig at Antonio. It's in reference to those small little things that he does, like the way he scans and holds that central space, and then he'll either drop to get the ball or he'll go in behind. He knows when to do that a lot more innately. It's part of him. Again, that goal as well, the way he took the control, turned with the ball and just hit in almost one motion without even looking at the goal because he knew where it was. We've seen with Antonio, if in that same situation, he's looking up to then find where the goal is. Whereas with Scamacca, is also far more natural. And also when you think about Scamacca's chance and Antonio's one earlier where he got put through by Ben Rama, fair enough, Antonio got pressed by the defender, but the rashness of one person's shot in relation to Scamacca's, again, not getting on at Antonio, but it's just the point of the differing in terms of their styles and their composure when they're in those kind of moments is different. And the moment he brought on Rice, Scamacca and Paqueta, you just felt an air of something could now happen. Obviously, Paqueta's first touch was an outside of the left foot through ball to Soufal down on the right.
Yeah.
As you say, Scamacca picking up the ball, do one or two players, play a pass. He is so physically strong and he doesn't necessarily look it because he's quite slender, but he's so physically strong, so technically good. And, when he's in front of goal and you give him half a chance, there's every chance he is going to bury it like the one he had. It wasn't an easy thing for him to actually slot away, but the quick thinking from Paqueta to essentially make the most of his control or miscontrol, as it kind of was at first, to then think it over was, fantastic. As you say, the way he scanned and spotted space, and essentially he gambled that the defender is going to move out. And he tried to play offside, funnily enough. You actually see him raise his hand. But again, it's that willingness to take that gamble, to take those calculated risks in which to then just drop into a space. And then if something was to fall, then he's in the perfect position. And he does that so often. We saw it in the last game against Wolves. Obviously, his goal was probably more technical, I would probably say, against Wolves. Against, again, Anderlecht, he was great. He's scored, I think, in every game so far in our Europa Conference, I think.
Did he score? Maybe not the first one where we won 3-1. But yeah, every other game he scored in, yeah.
And, it's just, he looks like he's going to score when he's given a chance. And, me and Sloth were banging on about how good technically he was, and that he's more like an Arnautovic, and obviously his idol is Ibrahimovic. So you can see why, he wants to be more technical and why he plays that way. But yeah, he's a fantastic player. And, even Moyes had a bit of a smile when someone asked him about the 3 players he brought on, and all 3 of them were involved in that goal as well.
Yeah.
The difference you can have if that's your bench in a game where you're rotating to then go, right, time to go and win this game, on you go. And, you can bring on those 3 players. And, Paqueta was obviously feeling it after he got, that. He did the audacious little kind of Neymar type control. But again, it's those little things now that we have players that when they come on, you go, they can make something happen. And it's going to put pressure on the likes of Antonio to step up and to make more of it. And if you don't follow him, I would recommend you do. But, Rocky we made a very good point about, we've got some good players in our team we've got some good steady eddies who actually, when they play, haven't done much wrong. Antonio is a prime example. Hasn't done much wrong in the last few games. Actually done fairly all right. I know Sloth wasn't too impressed with him in the last game, but he actually did quite okay. I think he did what we needed him to do as a centre forward. Arguably, probably should have scored one, but that's part of Bayern. And in this one, again, kept the defenders honest, ran the channels, held the ball up. He's not like SCAMACCA in that he doesn't release it quick enough to essentially put the burden on his other teammates and make them play as well. But again, he done right. Fabianski is another example of a player that hasn't done much wrong, but when you look at like Areola, I always feel with Areola, he will make a save where you go, well, that is world class. I don't know if Fabianski would have been saving that Fabio Silva header. I just don't think so. The actions are there to have done that, whereas Areola was. So I think when you look at it now, we've got these very good players, and now we've got these players that are just that cut above, who, even though these guys are doing probably what they've been doing for us in other seasons and other years, they're doing everything we would want them to do. But then there's a player who can do everything like that and then a bit more. And I think that's we're going to see quite a transition over the season, and even next season. I think we'll see quite a transition as some of our probably more beloved players maybe get a little bit more marginalised. I know there's a big love for Dawson, but I do think that once Agard comes back, we probably will see Zuma and Kera really having a true fight for that right centre back role. Obviously, Agard is most likely going to be the left-sided centre back, and obviously, if we're looking at Ndika and he comes in, then that strength in the back 4 positions is incredible. So you kind of look at it and you think, well, players like Dawson, who possibly will go in January, maybe if we get an offer. You look at it and go, I think some of our mainstays from previous years will start to go by the wayside in the likes of Antonio, possibly Fabianski over the course of the season might be phased out because, Areola will be our first choice next year. Yeah. And again, even Cresswell could be phased out over the course of the season. So we could see, as the season progresses, a few of the players that are probably so, at the forefront of what we did last season actually being a lot more kind of on the periphery of the squad, I think, really, and being a bit more impact.
We've lost you, Mike, but you're back. There we go.
Yeah. I just think we'll probably see some of our players from last year who were the mainstays will be a bit more on the peripherals going forward, I think.
Yeah, I think we've seen that as well. I think we've seen that already. You know, I think last night was probably the prime example of that. We made so many changes, and you know, a lot of those guys probably aren't going to be in that starting 11 on Sunday. And you know, Anderlecht away, if that was last season, we would be going into this Fulham game, you know, with Rice probably having played 90. You know, our key players all haven't played 90, and you know, they've all been given a fairly decent rest. You know, playing 20 minutes won't really affect them, and you know, there was others that stayed on the bench. So I think though that's probably the main positive from it, because we managed to go to Anderlecht, get the result that we needed. The performance, you know, stayed the same. I'd say, you know, there were parts where we did drop off, but in all, it was a good performance, a solid performance away from home in Europe. And you know, we've kept our key players, you know, fresh and fit for Sunday, and that's something we didn't have last season. And we saw that big drop off in the second half of the season. So hopefully, you know, having these players that we can bring in for Europe and we can, you know, provide that balance, we won't just drop off at January and February. We'll have that kind of consistency that we wanted to see last season, and you know, which could have probably got us top 6 again if we did have the depth. So yeah, I think that's the main one. But let's end with our man of the match. I'll let you go first because I know what mine is.
Mine will actually be Downes. You know, all the things I said. I just think he was very solid last night. Good on the ball, one possession. You know, I made the joke the other night. The only blemish on his performance was his nosebleed session and the blazing over the bar. But besides that, he was incredibly solid and you know, did everything that was asked of him and then some. And I think, you know, to outshine a player like Lanzini, who's been, you know, at the forefront of a lot of good over the years for West Ham, I think it says a lot about him. And in only his third game, technically, you know, when you consider sub games, you know, third, fourth game, I think, he really did stand out, especially in the midfield, and he didn't look out of place.
Yeah, no, I think he really stood out to me last night, and you know, like you mentioned, he's only played a couple games. I think that was his second start, and you know, away at Anderlecht in a 3-4-1-2, not even kind of in like a 4-3-3 where he's got the extra midfielder. So yeah, he was just everywhere, especially in the second half. He was absolutely brilliant. You know, he was winning everything. He was playing those forward passes, and like he even mentioned in his interview, he could have got a goal himself if he you know, had that little bit more composure, but. You know, to be fair to him, on his weak foot, going, you know, spinning away from goal, it's a very difficult shot to kind of execute. And, you know, that's not his role. You know, he's going to be that sitter. So, yeah, I think from, you know, even from Moyes' comments where he mentioned, you know, Downes the past 2 or 3 weeks has been really good in training. He didn't see that at the start when he first came in, and he's kind of mentioned like maybe he's had to raise his level. And I think he did that last night, you know, in abundance. He was just absolutely everywhere and was fantastic. And you know, I think he understood the type of game it was very early on, and you know, was able to keep hold of possession a lot and recycle the ball, and not only that, but win, you know, dispossess his opposition and then get us on the front foot again. So yeah, I think for him, I just love players that are comfortable on the ball, you know, comfortable in possession, which is why I would probably like to see him start on Sunday with Rice over Souček. But I know that won't happen, and you know, Souček deserves to stay in after his performance against Wolves. But yeah, I think it's a good option to have.
You know, as we say, I think it will come in time. He just needs to be patient. I think as a fan base, some of our fan base needs to be patient, and we also need to acknowledge that these are 2 games in the Europa Conference. Until we, you know, really see him in anger in the Premier League, it's difficult to say that he's going to boss as much as he had in these Europa League games. But he has been very good, and he's given Moyes at least that point of he has a player that he can now, or he potentially feels that he can rely on. And I think that's the most important thing. You have to earn Moyes' trust. Once you do that, then you may start getting chances. And I think we'll probably see him against Fulham. But I think he could be a really good closer for us in games. That's where I think at the moment is where he's going to have to work his way in as a closer. And then obviously in cup games, such as Europa and everything, to earn that starting spot. Unless Souček throws an absolute stinker again, and then then it's wide open. But it just relies on Souček form dipping below what it was against Wolves for me.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Anderlecht again in a week at home, so it'll be likely that Downes will get the start for that. And, if he impresses again in that game and bosses, then I think we have Southampton away. And if Souček doesn't perform against Fulham, then it could be that he gets his start. So,
exactly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think overall, a really positive night last night. Really good performance overall. We had some great chances. Defensively, pretty sound. Just that one chance really for Anderlecht, that header, which was, excellent save from Areola. But all in all, got the job done, rested our key players for the majority. And recognised when the game was there for the taking, just making a few of those changes. And, we saw the impact straight away. So, yeah, really positive. We're going to have our preview of the Fulham match going out tomorrow. So we'll go into a bit more depth there. But, yeah, any last words, Mike, for the win?
No. Three wins from 3 games. Brilliant start. Absolutely what we wanted. One more win, and then you would arguably say that we are on course to come top of our group, and we can take our foot off the gas a little in the next 2 games, and even give a couple of the youngsters a go. So nothing but positive, and it's always good to have the opportunity to blood through some young talent as well in the next 2 games. The last 2 games if the next Anderlecht game goes well. Yeah,
definitely. I think this Conference League is actually giving these players a chance, and some of them are taking it, some of them aren't, but that's football. And we'll see how we perform in a couple of days. The fixtures are coming very fast up until the World Cup, so there's going to be a lot of rotation, I think, with the team, and players will get their chances, and there'll be injuries, so we'll just have to see how it goes. But yeah, hopefully we can take that into our Premier League form and get 3 wins in a week, which would be brilliant. And I guess before we go, make sure to go follow us over on Twitter at Babbling Irons. We'll be tweeting out there regularly about kind of stuff that happens in games or things for you to get involved with. And like I said, we'll be back for our preview of Fulham tomorrow. So that'll be going out in the afternoon at some point. And then we'll be back for the review of hopefully another Premier League win.
Hopefully,
But thanks for tuning in, guys. Enjoy your evenings. And one thing left to say.
Come on, you Irons.